That's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Indiana Adventures, I guess. Not the expanded universe. So, I was a bit inspired. Now, of course, at the time of recording this, the fifth Indiana Jones film will be coming out later this year. I'm probably not going to see it, at least not in theaters, unless I hear that it's overwhelmingly like everybody loves it. Otherwise, I'll probably just wait to watch it once and never again on, like a streaming service, just because I don't care about it as much as I care about Star Wars. But, if everybody says it's absolutely horrendous, then I probably won't check it out. If it's more mixed, I'll wait till it comes out on streaming. But it inspired me. And also Noah, Quality Autism from YouTube, along with Stupid Chainsaw Productions, Jeremy, have been reviewing, both in English, thank God, the novels of Indiana Jones that are, within the expanded universe of Indiana Jones. And I do plan on reading those eventually. But one thing that was more easily accessible was the Young Indiana Jones Adventures, which was a TV series that came out about the young Indiana Jones. So I thought I'd just talk about a little bit about it. It was originally, like supposed to be more of like this educational program, sort of like, Doctor Who was at first, whereas, had the backdrop of, well, it's a alien, and you're traveling in a spaceship through space and time, but, it was mainly just time in the beginning because it was, exploring historical locations and, wacky antics ensue. But it's a lot like that. It's very educational. It actually gives off a lot of the same vibes that the Ewok films give, at least the early episodes where it's like little kid Indy. Back in these episodes, Indy is still called Henry because he's junior, like Henry Jones, and he won't go by Indy till episode 6, which is actually pretty consistent, but we'll get into the more fun parts of that later on. So episode 1, he's in Egypt. He gets to explore Egypt. He's really wanted to see Egypt. He likes mummies and stuff. It's fun. It's very slow paced, but at the same time, it's fun to see obviously this kid is not the Indiana Jones that you know from the movies. But at the same time, he's very smart, very into archaeology, very into history, and has a little bit of a smart butt mouth to him. Like he will talk back. He's very respectful, but he does have his moments of quippiness that that Indiana Jones is kind of known for. And we get introduced to the main players of the first half of season 1, which is his dad, his mom, who won't be around by the episode 6 of this, and his tutor, who was very important to this series, basically like his grandma-like figure. And he'll meet new people in every single episode. We get to episode 2, and basically the first half, because I think they were like 40-minute episodes that just kind of got combined into a single episode to make it like an hour 30. Basically a movie length. So the first half, because another thing about this series that is kind of funny is that Indy just becomes friends and knows every single famous person that has ever existed. At least that would be alive around that time frame, in the 1900s. So he gets to meet Teddy Roosevelt, and they become best buds. The second half, he gets to hang out with a bunch of artists, like Picasso, and that's basically it. But they're both the first 2 episodes are really fun. Like, there's not a lot of action. I mean, Indy kind of gets kidnapped at the end of the first episode, by slavers. And so one of the older characters we meet has to go and rescue him. And it's, and of course there's this black kid that was his friend, that's kind of a servant to this lady. But he was going to get sold into slavery and they save him. But, so little minor action stuff, but of course this is a little kid, Indy, so you wouldn't expect the same amount of stuff as you would later on. We get to episode 3, which is the famous character that Indy gets to meet in this one is Freud, and by Freud I mean Sigmund Freud. And Indy gets his first crush in this episode. So it's all about love, and what does that mean? But also very heavy subject matter. Not in the sense of, like what a lot of other shows do, which is like death and stuff. Though this show covers that too. But just more the fact that it doesn't show you anything explicitly, but Indy's mom cheats on Indy's father. We see her go on dates at the very least. If anything else happened, this is a family show, so we're not going to see it. But she cheated on him. And it doesn't even matter if there wasn't any sexual stuff involved. She still spent time romantically with another man with that intention in mind. So however you swing it, it's bad. And it deals with the subject, I think, pretty well. Only thing I don't like is the mom kind of gets no repercussions for her actions. Because the dad basically never finds out. Which I feel he had a right to know. But, she's struggling with it throughout the entire episode. There's this man that she's falling in love with. He's very exciting, very fun, very not her husband. But eventually she decides her kid and her husband are more important. And, the other guy basically wanted her to run away with him. And she kissed her husband right in front of the guy that she'd, been with. And so he walks off to leave and never return. But her husband never knows that she had, for one instance, betrayed him. And I felt that was a little weird. But, I get the point. She chose what was most important, which was her family. But it was a little, That being said, I think the kids are supposed to be watching this. So to deal with that subject, I thought it was dealt with fairly well. Episode 4 is Russia. Indy explores Russia. And I'm not as well familiar with Russian history outside of, like World War II. So, history buffs could probably explain to you the people he met. I assume they were important somewhere in history because he meets important people all the time in history because he's Indiana Jones. And so he meets that and he does that and there's that. And also, the second half of the episode, he just spends a lot of time with his dad, which is good because they won't have the best relationships in the movies. So, also the dad is nothing like Sean Connery. You're just going to have to deal with it. Episode 5 deals a lot with religion. Kind of just exploring the different religions that there are and talking about that. And exploring China. I don't have too much to add, though. They're all fun episodes, but sometimes I just don't have as much to say about it. But, they're all very entertaining. Now, here's the big thing I got to discuss. The last 2 episodes of Season 1 basically establish what the rest of the show is going to be like. Quickly gone is the young child Indiana Jones, and we jump into an Indiana Jones that is now in high school, going to prom, and no longer goes by Henry, he goes by Indy. Now, there is a 4-year gap. Or maybe even not a 4-year gap. There's more than 4-year gap in between the kid stuff that we just watched in episode 5 to this teenage Indy. So I don't know how many years were in between all that. But here's the thing that I also might review in the future, but I just don't have access to at the moment, is there are comics and young adult novels like the Young Jedi Knight series that I've reviewed before, but for Indiana Jones, called Young Indiana Jones Adventures or something like that. And I guess it really depends if it gives a specific time placement within the novels themselves. But there's a large enough gap of time in between episode 5 and episode 6 that you could fit all of those adventures within that time frame. The only other very, very important stuff to mention is that the episode in which the prom is taking place is 1916. Now we know that from the flashback from Indiana Jones, The Last Crusade, that flashback at the very beginning of the film, he's with the Boy Scouts and he gets, he goes on the train tracks and the people are chasing him. And the bad guy or whatever gives him his hat at the end of that before it changes to Harrison Ford and everything. Fighting, doing his thing. So that flashback happens in 1912. And the stuff going on in this episode, episode 6, is 1916. So we know that adventure had already happened for Indy. So what I imagine is that however you go about this, episode 5 happens of this show, then all of the young Indy, expanding universe material happens before the event from the Last Crusade film. Then not too much action happens between that time, from after the Last Crusade stuff till we get to here in this episode. Basically, Indy just wants to go to prom, but he wants to drive a car to make this bully shut up. And Edison is supposed to help him with that. Yes, Thomas Edison. But it turns out the villain of the episode, although kind of a victim, just wanted to make sure that Thomas Edison did not put his name on somebody else's hard work. But since that guy was going by illegal means to do so, he was arrested. And Indy was very much a detective with his girlfriend of the week, because she was, only a girlfriend for that episode. And then by the, second half of the episode, he decides to just on a whim go to New Mexico. Albuquerque. Doo-doon, doom-doon, doon-doon, Indiana Jones, do-do-do-do-do-do-do. That's my Breaking Bad reference for the day. But, so, he just abandons his girlfriend, he leaves, and as we can see by the end of this season, he never returns, and so he goes and helps in the Mexican Revolution. Yes, Indiana Jones had basically the same sort of situation that John Marston from Red Dead Redemption has, which is also really funny because it takes place at pretty much the same time period. Only difference, John Marston does a lot more shooting and killing than Indy does, which so far has been consistent. I know that Jeremy has reviewed one of the books in the Indiana Jones, expanding universe, and it says that Indy's not very experienced with fighting. Now, he's going to be joining World War I in Season 2, so we'll see, depending on how they use that, because he could not fight a lot in that. It really depends. But, because all we know so far is that the most action he's ever dealt with was in the Last Crusade flashback, and, he was kind of, falling over. He was very much a klutz. He wasn't, actually dishing out, a lot of punches there, so no harm, no foul there. But now he's about to join the army, so we'll see if that remains a fair thing to say in the books. But, the second half, is... What is the second half? The second half, fights in Mexico, and leaves. That's it. It's crazy, though. And he doesn't actually do that much fighting, but he does help out that war, and then he leaves. He dips. And then we get to the final episode of Season 1, which... I really have nothing to say about the first half. I mean, it's fine. It's not my favorite thing. They're in Ireland, and there's stuff from history that I don't really know about with Ireland that's been going on, and Indy helps out with that. But the most important thing is the second half of episode 7, where Indy, I didn't know I'd ever say this, has the best love interest ever in this episode. Not in the movies, maybe in the books, but I doubt it. Right here in episode 7, the best... romantic relationship he's probably ever had or ever will have, but it gets cut short due to circumstance. It deals with the women's suffrage and everything. Indy talks about how his mom died 3 years ago. All that good stuff. But it was a really good episode, and I really enjoyed the chemistry between him and the woman. And she was perfect for him, literally perfect. And I felt the way she left was kind of contrived. but she says, I cannot become a writer. I cannot fulfill my dreams and hopes if I'm with you. It will hinder me from doing so because I'll have to get married and have kids. Da, da, da. Now, of course, if you're a Christian, you should be married before you do and if you live together, that's more likely to happen. It's kind of harder to avoid that if you're living together. But, I don't see why she could have gotten married and just not had kids for a little bit. I don't see why, because Indy isn't religious, why they couldn't just be together, like a lot of couples are these days. I know plenty of friends that are living together that aren't married. For a character like Indy, that doesn't seem like it would be an issue because he's Indy. He's not somebody super religious or anything. But, and he even says, like, why does me being with you hinder you from doing this? And I don't feel she really gave an adequate explanation. It's more of, well, Indy can't get married because he's not married by the time of the films. But I don't know if it was exactly the best way to go about that. I mean, I wouldn't have done something cheap like killing her off either. But I don't know. It rubbed me the wrong way that you found this perfect woman for Indy and she just can't be with him because then she can't follow her dreams? I don't know. Especially since Indy was seeming so accommodating about it too. He's like, why does that have to hinder you? I don't want to stop you. I want to be an archaeologist. Why can't we be together? But this episode may really help explain why he's such a womanizer moving forward. Because he genuinely had like some deep love for this woman. And then she dipped. So really sad for Indy. But it was absolutely phenomenal. That whole second half of the episode was probably my favorite episode of the entire season. It was just really well done. And like I said, this series was meant to be more educational. It's very slow. There is a few action scenes, especially as you move into the teenage Indy that's already experienced the flashback from the Last Crusade. But it's still not Indiana Jones as you know him. He's not really formed into that. And I don't think by the end of the series he will form into that either. Because then you still have the novels that, Noah and Jeremy are reviewing that take place after this, where Indy is supposed to, within those novels, I mean, they're all kind of standalone because that's how Indiana Jones works, but throughout those novels, the only consistent thing is Indy's going to become, he's going to turn into the Indy at the start of, the movie franchise by the end of it. That's like the only consistent thing, everything else is a standalone adventure. But, that being said, I could see the hints, the glimpses of the Indy that is in there. And the guy playing, the kid that played Indy as a kid, I thought did a wonderful job. Probably one of the better child actors I've seen, especially in like the 80s or 90s whenever these were filmed. I think the 90s. And I think the teenage Indy is phenomenal. I think he's doing a great job as Indy. He doesn't seem exactly like Harrison Ford, but at the same time he's developing more into that persona. So, but there's definitely hints of it, I think, throughout the performance. There's also stuff I didn't really mention, that there are these bookends to the episodes where you get to see old Indy talking about that particular adventure, and that's cool and neat. That might warrant an own separate video of its own, though, just to talk about it. I don't know if I will or not, but, that's something that also happens. But overall, as somebody that is not the biggest Indiana Jones fan, I like Indiana Jones, don't get me wrong, but it was never something that was like, oh, I need Indiana Jones. Like, that's always been, Lord of the Rings or Star Wars, It's never been, I've always been a very casual fan of Indiana Jones. But that being said, I really enjoyed this series, it's a million times better than the Ewoks films, and I love the Ewoks films. But this show has some of the best writing for like a kid show I think I've seen. There's Adventure Time and all that, but like, it's pretty good for a kid show, and it deals with some heavy subjects sometimes. Like, you got one of the Mexicans that Indy meets in the previous episode I mentioned, dies, and that deals with death and everything, and of course his mom dies, But overall, I think it was a really good season. But I'm excited as we move into season 2 and 3 to see Indy kind of become more, not exactly yet, because he's still, only a teenager, but to him to become more of the character that I recognize. And of course, in between my other book reading, like Dune and Star Wars and whatever else I'm doing, I will eventually be getting to the the novels that are written about him, just because I'm curious to read those, and then I'll rewatch the films. I don't know if I'll review the films because I'm not very good at reviewing movies, but so that's definitely something I plan on doing. So something that I wasn't originally going to do for my channel, but I decided, hey, why not? And so nobody's that I know that's my friend on YouTube has done this particular section yet. So at least in this aspect, for the moment, I'm original until I start reviewing the novels, and then I'm just a copycat of them. But for this instance, for this moment, I am original. Much like the Doctor Who 50th anniversary, where John Hurt goes, "Well, for this moment, I am the Doctor again." Um, but actually, that makes me think of another thing. Oh, this is so off topic. But in case Brendan is watching this, Quinlan Voss, just so you know, guys, if you don't know who Quinlan Voss is, I do a podcast with him on the Expanding Universe website talking about Star Wars. It's phenomenal. You should go check that out on the website. But you really should go subscribe to Brennan because he makes by far top 5, top 3 for me Expanding Universe YouTubers out there. You need to go check them out. And basically, this spiel is coming out because the War Doctor from Doctor Who, again, completely off topic, ADHD for you. But he says, it is the privilege, great men are forged in fire. It is the privilege of lesser men to light the flame. I may have, started talking to Brennan and got him, more into the YouTube scene. But he's definitely surpassed me, and I'm very happy for him. But anyway, completely off topic. As for Indiana Jones, Season 1, Young Indiana Jones was phenomenal. I'm really excited to watch Season 2 and 3, and then to read the novels that take place before the movies. I hope you all join me for that. Until next time, what should I say? This review belongs in a museum. See you next time.